Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're focusing squarely on Macau SAR, China.
Yes, specifically with the traveler, the tourist, in mind. So if you're planning a trip, this is for you.
Exactly. We've pulled together information from, well, quite a few different angles to give you a really rounded picture before you go.
We've got stuff from like a recent epidemiological study on a health situation there, info from the Macau Judiciary Police.
Travel advice from the U.S. State Department, the U.K. government, too.
Right, plus some news reports on crime and safety and really practical guidance from the Macau Government Tourism Office, especially about typhoon season.
So our mission here is basically to boil all this down for you, give you the key info you need for your visit, covering the practical stuff and, safety considerations.
Without overwhelming you, hopefully. We want to pull out some maybe surprising facts, give you those aha moments so you feel, well, prepared and informed.
Okay, let's get into it. Maybe start with that health situation you mentioned, looking back a bit.
Yeah, let's look at the SARS-CoV-2 Omicron BA.5 outbreak. This was back in July 2022. It's interesting to see how they handled it.
Absolutely. The numbers are quite telling, aren't they? They had, what, over 1,800 confirmed cases?
Yeah, but the key thing for travelers, I think, is that most of those were actually mild or even asymptomatic.
And only 6 deaths recorded, which, while tragic, is a relatively low number given the cases.
And it points to how they responded. They implemented some pretty stringent public health and social measures. Think repeated universal testing for everyone.
And that 2-week stay-at-home order, that's quite significant.
It really is. And they already had pretty high vaccination coverage by mid-June 2022. Something like 85.6% had more than 2 doses.
And over 40% had 3 doses.
Which likely helped. The study we looked at showed the outbreak was basically controlled by the end of July. They couldn't find SARS-CoV-2 RNA in community samples in that final round of testing.
Wow. So quite effective then.
Seems so. The study estimated the mean incubation period for that specific variant, BA.5, at about 3.27 days.
Okay.
And the case fatality risk was low, 0.33%. But it's important to note, those who sadly died were elderly. The average age was like 92.5 years old.
Right. And the study did mention, didn't it, that because all these measures happened together.
Exactly. It's hard to pinpoint the effect of each specific measure. They use a whole package approach.
But the main takeaway for you, the listener thinking about visiting, is that Macau showed it could manage a public health situation pretty decisively.
Yeah.
That offers some reassurance, maybe.
Definitely. Okay, so moving on from health to maybe the more day-to-day concern for visitors, safety and security.
Yeah, always top of mind when you're traveling. What's the general picture?
Well, the good news is Macau generally has a low crime rate. That's the reputation, and the recent stats seem to bear that out.
Oh, really? What do the numbers say?
Well, the overall crime rate in 2024 stayed pretty stable, actually dropped just under 1% from 2023.
Okay, stable's good.
And maybe more significantly, it's down over 20% compared to 2019, before the pandemic hit everything.
That is a significant drop. And violent crime.
Very rare, apparently. Only 1 homicide reported in 2024 so far.
That's reassuring. But what about less serious stuff? Petty crime.
Yeah, that's where you need to be a bit more careful. Pickpocketing, other kinds of street crime that can happen, especially in crowded tourist spots.
Like around the casinos. Or the airport, maybe.
Exactly. Those kinds of places. So the usual advice applies. Keep a close eye on your belongings. Be aware of your surroundings.
Standard travel smarts, then. But you mentioned another issue earlier.
Ah, yes. Fraud. While overall crime is down, fraud is still flagged as a serious issue. There were 354 cases in 2024.
And involving quite a bit of money, I read.
Over 150 million patakas in losses. Yeah, it's significant.
Now, and who's being targeted?
This is interesting. Students are increasingly becoming victims. Nearly 30% of fraud victims were students, losing around 68 million patakas.
That's concerning. What kind of fraud are we talking about?
It's a lot of the stuff we see globally, really. Telecommunications and cyber fraud are on the rise. Impersonation scams, someone pretending to be police or officials.
Right. Or online investment scams. Promising big returns.
Those too. And online shopping scams, fake websites, goods never arriving.
So the police are aware of this. What are they doing?
They seem to be quite active.
Yeah.
The Judiciary Police run prevention campaigns. They have mechanisms to quickly block phishing websites.
Okay.
And they're working with mainland authorities, too, to freeze suspicious accounts involved in these scams.
That's good to hear. Is there anything practical travelers can use?
Well, they actually have an anti-fraud program integrated into their official WeChat account. It's PJ Macau. Apparently, you can use it to check if a phone number or website seems risky.
Oh, that's useful,
Mm.
especially if you use WeChat. Now, Macau has this colorful history, doesn't it? Mention of pirates and gangsters.
It does, yeah. Historically, Macau had a reputation. Pirates used the coastline, and later it was known for triad activity, especially linked to the casinos back in the day.
It's hard to square that image with the sort of glitzy modern Macau you
Oh,
see advertised, right?
totally different vibe now.
Yeah.
But yeah, that history is there. Since the handover to China in 1999, the government really cracked down hard on organized crime.
So are the triads gone?
Well, sources suggest they likely still exist in some form, but they operate at a much, much lower level. It's not the kind of overt presence you might have seen decades ago. It's been a major cleanup.
Interesting context. Now, what about formal travel advice, like from the US or UK?
Right, so the U.S. State Department advises travelers to exercise increased caution.
Why is that?
They cite concerns about the arbitrary enforcement of local laws and also note that their ability to provide emergency consular services in Macau is limited.
Okay. And the UK?
The UK government notes the low crime levels, which aligns with the local police stats. But they also give that warning about pickpocketing and street crime.
Especially in crowded areas. Casinos late at night.
Yeah, pretty much the same advice. And both the US and UK advisories also make a point of warning their citizens about national security laws. Basically, be aware and don't violate them.
So standard advice, respect local laws wherever you travel. What if someone does need help? Police numbers.
Yeah, the main 24-hour report hotline for the Judiciary Police is 993.
993. Got it.
They also have other services, maybe less for immediate emergencies, but good to know about, like a crime prevention team for buildings, a complaint center, community relations groups.
Okay, so resources are there if needed. Let's switch gears to more practical planning stuff. Visas.
Right. Good news for many people, if you're just going for tourism and staying less than 30 days, a lot of nationalities don't need a visa.
But you absolutely have to check based on your passport.
Right.
Don't just assume.
Definitely. Always confirm for your specific nationality. And regardless of visa needs, your passport needs to be valid for at least 90 days beyond when you plan to leave Macau.
Standard rule for lots of places. And proof of funds. Onward travel.
Yeah, you should be prepared to show you have enough money for your stay and proof you've got a flight or ferry ticket booked to leave.
Okay. Money itself. What's the currency?
The official currency is the Macau Pataka, the MOP.
Okay.
But the Hong Kong dollar, the HKD, is very widely accepted almost everywhere and often just treated as one-to-one with the Pataka, even though the exchange rate isn't exactly one-to-one.
That makes things easier, especially if you're coming from Hong Kong. What about mainland Chinese currency? RMB.
The renminbi, yeah, that's also accepted in many places, particularly tourist-focused ones. Again, often at that sort of informal one-to-one rate.
And cards.
Yeah.
ATMs.
Widely accepted credit cards, debit cards for ATMs. You shouldn't have much trouble using them in shops, restaurants, hotels.
Good. Back to safety tips for a sec. We mentioned pickpocketing. Anything else specific to Macau?
Well, the emergency number for police, fire, ambulance is 999. That's the one to use for immediate emergencies.
That's important distinction from the police report line.
Yeah. Also, something maybe not everyone realizes, self-protection sprays like mace or pepper spray. They're banned. Don't bring them.
Ah, good tip for packing. Leave that at home. And scams. We touched on fraud.
Right. Just be generally aware. Internet scams, phone calls asking for money, suspicious dating app profiles, dodgy financial schemes. Vigilance is key.
And photography. Any restrictions?
Generally fine, but be careful around military sites, and some casinos might have rules about way you can and can't take pictures inside. Best to check if you're unsure.
Makes sense. How about getting around? Transport options.
Taxis are pretty common and generally seen as inexpensive. You can find them easily at hotels, casinos, ferry terminals, the airport.
Okay. And I heard about free shuttles.
Yes. Many of the big hotels and casinos run their own free shuttle bus routes. These can be super convenient for getting between major hubs like the ferry terminals, the border gate, and different casino resorts.
That's a great tip for saving money. What about public buses?
They're frequent and cover a lot of the territory, but navigating them might be a bit trickier if you're going off the main tourist trail, maybe less English signage or announcements.
Okay. And ride sharing. Uber?
Nope. Uber is illegal in Macau, so stick to taxis or buses or those shuttles.
Good to know. Driving yourself.
Possible, but remember they drive on the left, like Hong Kong or the UK.
Right. Left-hand drive.
Yeah.
Do you need a special permit?
You likely will need an international driving permit, yeah. Best to check the specific requirements based on where your license is from before you even consider renting a car. Honestly, given the shuttle options and taxis, most tourists probably don't need to drive.
Fair point.
Okay.
Let's talk weather.
Yeah.
Specifically, typhoons. That's a thing there, right?
It is. Typhoon season is roughly May to November, but the peak, when you're most likely to see activity, is usually July to September.
So if you're traveling then, you need to be prepared for potential disruption.
Absolutely. The Macau Meteorological and Geophysical Bureau, that's the official body, they issue warnings using a signal system.
Signals, how does that work?
It's a numbered system. Signal No. 1 is basically a standby signal, means a typhoon is distant but could affect Macau. Signal No. 3 means strong winds are expected.
Okay. And then it gets more serious.
Right. Signal No. 8 is a big one. That usually means gale or storm force winds are expected or blowing. When Signal 8 goes up, lots of things shut down.
Like what?
Outdoor activities get suspended, schools and often offices close, the cross-sea bridges connecting the peninsula to Taipa might close. It significantly impacts transport and daily life.
And there are higher signals.
9 and 10.
Yes. Signal 9 means winds are increasing further, and Signal 10 is the highest hurricane force winds. That means the typhoon is expected to pass very close or directly over Macau. Very serious.
Wow. So pay attention to those signals. Is there anything else? Storm surges?
Yes. They also issue storm surge warnings, color-coded blue, yellow, orange, red, black, indicating the risk of flooding, especially in low-lying coastal areas. Black is the most severe.
So definitely stay informed if you're there during that season. Where do you get the latest info? The Meteorological Bureau's website is key. Also, the Government Information Bureau, local news, hotel announcements, and there are emergency refuge centers available if needed.
Good to know. And the tourism office has a hotline.
Yeah, for emergencies, the Macau Government Tourism Office has a 24-hour hotline, plus 853-2833-3000. Worth noting down.
Definitely. Okay, health again, briefly. Emergency number is 999. Medical facility.
They're considered adequate, good quality available. And like we said, Hong Kong, with very advanced facilities, is only about an hour away by ferry if something really serious happens.
But insurance is key, right?
Absolutely essential. Make sure your policy covers you overseas. And supplemental insurance for medical evacuation is often recommended, just in case.
What about medications, if you take prescriptions?
Carry them in their original packaging. Have a copy of your doctor's prescription. And importantly, double check that your specific medications are actually legal to bring into Macau before you travel. Some things might be controlled differently there.
Good advice. Any other health points? Air quality? Vaccinations?
Air pollution can sometimes be an issue, like in many cities, something to be aware of if you have respiratory problems. And yeah, just make sure you're up to date on routine vaccinations and check if the CDC recommends anything specific for Macau before you go.
Okay. Last big area. Local laws and customs. Anything travelers really need to know?
Well, be aware you're subject to Macau laws. And because it's a special administrative region of China, certain PRC laws, mainland Chinese laws, also apply there.
Like the national security laws mentioned in the advisories.
Exactly. Also, penalties for drug offenses are extremely severe. Zero tolerance. Don't even think about it.
Understood. What about nationality? If you hold 2 passports,
This is important. China, and therefore Macau, does not recognize dual nationality. So if you enter Macau on, say, a U.S. passport, even if you also hold another passport, you'll likely be treated solely as a U.S. citizen by the authorities. This can affect, for example, who provides consular assistance if you get into trouble.
okay, that's a crucial point for dual nationals.
Right.
And customs. Anything forbidden besides drugs?
The usual suspects, firearms, weapons, remember the pepper spray ban, certain publications maybe. Check the official customs regulations before you pack anything questionable.
Right. So, wrapping this all up then, key takeaways for someone planning a trip.
I'd say Macau offers this really unique mix, Portuguese history, Chinese culture, the whole casino scene. It's fascinating.
And generally safe, it sounds like.
Generally safe, yes. Low violent crime. But you need that awareness, especially about petty theft in busy areas and definitely about the potential for fraud. Be vigilant.
And understand how they handle things like health situations and, importantly, typhoons if you're going during that season. Being prepared makes a huge difference.
Absolutely. Knowing those typhoon signals, having the right insurance, being aware of local laws, it all helps you have a smoother, safer trip.
So here's something to maybe mull over as you finish planning. Macau's journey, from its complex past to this global tourism hotspot, what does its current approach to safety, security, even public health tell us? Especially about how these special administrative regions balance attracting visitors with maintaining control and order in our very connected world.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic, isn't it? How tourism, technology, like those anti-fraud apps and governance all interact there. Maybe checking out the websites for the tourism office or the judiciary police could give you some more food for thought on that.
Definitely something to think about. Well, thanks for taking this deep dive into Macau with us today.